Hi, and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I am Phil Long, Precision Agronomy Advisor with Latham High-Tech Seeds, and this week it's nice and hot out in the field. It's going to be hot all week, and we're at that critical time for both corn and soybeans in terms of filling the seed and filling the grain. So I want to talk a little bit today about soybeans, where they're at, and whether some considerations on fungicide, insecticide, and what you should be looking for when you're out in the field this time of the year. So want to start off with staging the soybeans because that's critical to understanding how much yield is left, what's going on out there in the soybean life cycle. So you start at the top with the trifoliate that would be out, leaves not touching, so that's going to be the top four right there. And you can see with the most developed pod that we got there, that's still going to be an R4 soybean. It's over an inch or so, but still R4 soybean. If we were looking at the node below it, has one like this, and if you hold it up to the sunlight, you can easily see that there's some beans in there about 1/8 of an inch in size. That would be R5 if that was on the top four nodes. So remember that. Those stages, at this point, these plants are still growing in height, still adding more leaves. So one day it might look like an R4, the next day it could almost look like an R3. It kind of jumps back and forth as it continues to grow, but just keep that in mind. That's why you look at the top four nodes of the plant at this point in the season. So some things to consider when we're out there, especially on the fungicide, insecticide side of things. Soybeans, this is a very critical time for them. They're growing rapidly, they're trying to fill seed, they're still growing height-wise as indeterminate soybeans do. So it's really important to protect them. They're using about 2 inches of water a week, so hopefully the canopy's closed and they got a good taproot system on them, and they have good nodules and so forth. Those are all important things to look for this time of the year. But in terms of fungicide and making that decision, the first thing you want to do is look at the whole canopy like we talked about in corn, but the most important part is protecting that top part of the plant. Usually the ones we see that are most worrisome are going to be frog eye leaf spot because they start at the top and work down. A lot of the diseases work from the bottom or the middle of the canopy up, like Septoria brown spot. We usually don't worry about that too much. It stays at the bottom for the most part, but you want to check the whole canopy. And the other thing is, a lot of times this time of the season, especially if we have storms and so forth, you'll see things like bacterial pustule or bacterial blight, which can kind of tatter the leaves, leave an open center, kind of fall out and have a halo of yellow around them. But those are bacterial diseases, so those aren't going to be helped by a fungicide if that's your primary concern out there in the field. You just want to make sure that you're IDing what's going on out there before you just spray a fungicide, because soybeans can be a little trickier in terms of yield response. If you don't have any issues going on out there, they don't typically show a response. So the other thing, the second part of this that you want to look at is typically we do see a synergistic effect between an insecticide and fungicide application at the same time. And in this case, we do have some feeding on these plants. This is actually grasshopper damage. You can see on these leaves we're having a little bit of defoliation. They just kind of open up the leaf, make a big hole. They just kind of eat as big of a hole as they want. A lot of times you'll see Japanese beetle damage as well. That can be kind of a skeletalizing of the leaves and so forth. And there's other issues out there. I haven't heard a lot of aphid situations going on, but aphids, you want to make sure you look at the top of the plant. They're going to come after the most succulent part of the plant, so you'll look there first. On the underside of the leaves, that 250 threshold is important. But in terms of just general defoliation on the plant this time of the year, when it's a critical point for the soybean, 15% is what you're looking at. If you're seeing 15 to 20% defoliation on a plant that's at this point getting into grain fill or seed fill, that would be your call threshold to make a spray application. So it's important to protect them this time of the year. Like I said, they're pulling up a lot of water, but they used all these leaves and put all those nutrients from the leaves into the pod. So it's important to protect all that on up to R6 time frame. We just talked about R5, but R6 is when that bean fully fills out that pod. I call it the green bean or edamame stage, where they're full and plump. And at that point, you typically don't see a response from protecting the plant because most of the work is done. They're just kind of finishing out. So with that, if you have any questions when you're out scouting, please feel free to give us a call at 1-877-GO-LATHAM or visit us on our website at lathamseeds.com. And as always, thanks for watching this week's Ask the Agronomist.